Okay, this is another, let's call this 3D slash 5D news, but primarily this is about 3D people. I've done a few talks on this topic, 3D, 5D news. For those of you who don't know what 5D means, well, everyone knows 3D. 3D is what we live in, right? We've got width, height, and then we've got depth. Three dimensions. And then the fourth dimension is time, in that in time I can move my 3D body around, you know, that's the fourth dimension, time. But some other people will give you another explanation for these other dimensions. They don't call time the fourth dimension. They call these people that are into like 4D, 5D, 6D, 9D, they don't consider time to be the fourth dimension. I don't know why. They're not the smartest people. But if you're going to understand all the talk about 5D, you need to understand what they go by. So instead of 4D being the fourth dimension being time, 4D for these people is you're in a world of, yes, good and evil. You're in a world where there's fairies, mythological creatures, extraterrestrials. It's the world where Star Wars would take place with all the different species, and you could have superpowers. If you want lightsabers, you can have all that stuff in the fourth dimension. But to get to the fifth dimension, the difference between the fifth dimension and the fourth dimension, you can have Star Wars and all the fighting, good and evil, in the fourth dimension. But once you get to the fifth dimension, all that crap is gone. There's no more evil in the fifth dimension. Somebody's going to put up their finger and tell you that there's a caveat. Well, it's actually in the densities, because law of one uses the words densities, not dimensions. And if you go to, I'm not sure which density it is, but the density that we live in, let's call it the third density. You have good and evil, and a world like ours. And then they don't really get into this mythological creatures in Star Wars in a middle dimension. But then you go to a higher density, and then you have to check law of one. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confusing you, but it's difficult. But all I'm trying to say is that in the fifth dimension, it's like the song by the band, The Fifth Dimension, Age of Aquarius. So go put that on. And then the other song you can go put on is John Lennon's Imagine. Now, the reason that somebody says there's a caveat on the fifth dimension, good and evil, is because sometimes people drag an idea from law of one into the fifth dimension. They're two separate things, this dimensions and densities, but they often get talked about at the same time. And I'm hoping I'm not confusing you, and I'm very sorry if I am. But in the law of one, they say you're either a STO, service to others, which isn't all about being service to others. It doesn't mean that you're a slave, but it means that you're a community. And then there's the service to self people, and the best idea for service to self is the evil emperor from Star Wars. He wants to be God and play God to all the other beings in the universe. So in the law of one, in third density where we are, they want people to separate themselves, to either lean towards service to others, community, or lean towards being the evil emperor on Star Wars. Pick one or the other. And what they say is when you get the harvest time is when you move from one density to another. So harvest time for us would go from third density to fourth density. And then they tell you, well, it's not just you community-minded service to others people that go to the next density. If you're really evil, you also get harvested and get brought to the fourth density. So in the fourth density, you have still evil entities. Can someone be service to self and not evil? I'm not an expert in law of one. You could look it up, but if you're going to give me I have to tell you, I'm going to say, I don't know. I was given a choice, and the choice was taken away. So why? Because I'm just, constantly the ideas that I'm talking about, just whoop, there they go. It's not like I'm sending them out of my mind someplace else. It's just like someone's got a vacuum and they're taking a vacuum to my head, to my mind, and they're just vacuuming out whatever I was going to talk about. It's not me. So it proves that there are other beings. Unless, what have I got? No, it's there definitely are you can have negative entities that are intelligent. No one would say that the evil emperor wasn't intelligent. So, in conclusion, we're always getting confused between dimensions and densities. If anybody's mentioning densities when it has to do with evolution, and I don't think they even use the word evolution, it's simple. Well, I guess it is very difficult. But anything to do with the words densities is law of one. If you've never heard of law of one, it came apparently from extraterrestrials who say that this is, the way they look at things. Law of one implies what? Oneness, that all of us are one thing. Yes. They imply that we are all one thing somehow. And that we are either distorted. It's a distortion, apparently, to be service to others and community minded, the same as it's a distortion to go be service to yourself. How does that make sense? I'm not going to tell you that the law of one is true. I can't prove it. It's just, around. And as far as going to the fifth dimension and age of Aquarius, I'm not an astrologer, but supposedly we're moving from the age of Pisces, which are in for 22,600 years, is it? One precession of the equinoxes. Well, it's something to do with the tilt of Earth, and it's so complicated. I don't know how I'd ever teach this course. I mean, if there was a course for, let's say, ninth graders on the course is simply to do with law of one, and then compare and contrast with the ideas of these going through these dimensions to the fifth dimension. Could I teach this class? No. I've been talking for 8 minutes, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't know enough about these things. And I look at these things. The Law of One comes up on my Facebook feed, a different paragraph from Law of One every day. I get information on Law of One every day. And as far as these dimensions, third dimension, fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, age of Aquarius, I've seen a lot of articles on it. But am I an expert? No, not an expert. So why am I talking about it? You got me. Why am I even talking about it? I guess the only way I'm going to know if I'm competent in this material is for me to talk and listen to myself to see whether I got it. Now, I'm going to give myself, I know the vocabulary. I can answer basic questions about dimensions and densities. So you could say, would I pass a ninth grade test on this? No. No, if you're taking this for a full semester, I don't think I can teach this. I don't know enough about it. So the takeaway is, don't look to me to explain this stuff any more than I have. I've got no more in depth on it. So you can find Law of One on the internet. You can go to Aaron Abke's YouTube channel. Aaron Abke can definitely explain Law of One. He's smarter than me, much smarter than me. He's much younger than me. That's the only caveat. There's always a caveat, because someone who's very good at explaining things, like a 25-year-old Aaron Abke, doesn't know all the things that a 55-year-old not so smart person knows. And what you know, at my age, there's always caveats. In other words, there's always things that are hidden. Maybe they're not put in the textbook, or maybe they're a small footnote in your textbook. Is it important? You better believe it. When I was in university many years ago, I was taking a course in political science. And on the final exam, there was a test question, and it was about a German word called Wissenschaft. And the definition for Wissenschaft was in the political science book on a footnote at the bottom of a page in very small type. And I didn't know what Wissenschaft was. And I did look it up later on. And I did find out what it was. And many decades later, at this moment, I don't know what it means anymore. But it doesn't mean that there's no caveats. The caveat is, if you're an old man, and it's been decades since you've been in the course that you took many decades ago, it would be wise for you to review the textbooks that you went through when you were 20 years old and refresh your memory.